Before you start shading a portrait, there's something you need to understand. Light is never neutral. It shapes everything. This is the first point you should keep in mind. You can't be afraid to darken your drawing. To overcome that fear, work your shading in layers, starting with an HB or B pencil and moving up to a 6B or 8B to get the most out of your tonal range. Before adding details, always observe the general shape of the shadow, because the lighting creates a unified block that must be understood as its own design. That's why it's worth commenting on the role of lighting in this portrait. The light comes from above, projected from the left, and it has a strong contrast. There is plenty of illumination on the forehead and on the frontal bones, but the entire hair area and the right side of the face fall into very deep, dark tones, including the eyes. That's why the most striking feature in this image is the contrast between the light tone of the iris and the shadow cast by the eyebrow over the eyelids and the whole eye region. The ambient reflection creates a high contrast on the pupil, giving the gaze a fixed, almost hypnotic look. This happens because the eye reflects light more directly than the skin. It's a more specular, concentrated highlight. The frontal lighting on the forehead, the orbital bones, and the left side of the face increases the sense of volume. This helps project the nose forward, but the shadow cast by the nose is not continuous. It is interrupted by the more frontal light, and the right side becomes slightly illuminated. To represent this effect, you need to create a specific gradient that conveys the idea of a single shadow being interrupted by the light passing through that region. This type of lighting is very common. And below the nose, we have a diffuse shadow with no sharp contour. The same happens with the shadow beneath the lower eyelids. On top of the nose, there are two strong highlights. Even in the shadowed areas, there is a very subtle secondary reflection coming from the environment, which prevents the shadow from looking flat and helps define the outline of the head. And it's worth mentioning that when shading male skin, especially in an adult man, there tends to be a bit more texture in the beard area when the shadow is stronger. The light coming from above also creates contrast on the lips and reinforces the sense of volume. It's what makes the upper lip very dark. This light passes through the left side of the lower lip, while the entire right side of the lips remains in shadow. The shape of the upper lip is influenced by the more triangular Cupid's bow and by the diagonals at the corners of the mouth, which become more visible because of the lighting direction. Above the upper lip, there is a very subtle outline of clarity. There is also shadow on the pillars of the mouth and under the jawline, which reinforces the outline of the head. The transition line between light and shadow, the terminator on the side of the head, needs to be soft but well defined because it reveals the real form of the face. All of this creates a richness of volume and makes the highlights stand out even more. In the end, it all comes down to training your eye. When you understand the logic of this lighting, shading stops being guesswork and becomes a deliberate choice. Follow me to see more tutorials like this. Thank you, and see you in the next drawing.